Yeah, hi, welcome, Mr. Venkatesh, M.R. Venkatesh, a very familiar and popular face on the Indian television and has been a speaker at many platforms. I'm immensely pleased to have him as a guest here today. In fact, I'm very pleased to announce that we are going to hold a few conversations, a series of conversations, in fact, uh, to understand the issues of the people from the economic point of view, which actually affects our social life the maximum. So as an individual and as a person living in a civilized society, I think what affects me worst is when I don't have money to buy something which I need. Uh, I may not be that concerned if I don't have the money to buy something which I wish. But if I cannot buy what I need, then I really get concerned about it. And then I try to find out what are the reasons that I am unable to get what I need. Now, uh, nationally today, in a post-COVID scenario, uh, I think most of us are in a very dreaded state of uh, financial uh, problem. Most of us, even those who at one point of time used to think that they are not vulnerable to the whims of time, have now faced severe crunch financially. We had seen half of it, perhaps, or maybe one third of it, or one fourth of it, somewhere in 2008 when there was a global meltdown which came. But what has happened now is much bigger than that, much wider in implication. So it's time that we try to understand what is the situation, what are the remedies, and how soon people would be able to get what they need. So without much ado, I would ask Venkatesh to give us his idea about this, and then we will take this discussion forward.
First of all, let me wish you and your viewers all the very best. This is my debut in your
Yeah.
channel. So it's a great pleasure and honor, sir, to be seen along with you, participate along with you, discuss matters with you. And coming to the first question that you have raised, it's a very pertinent and a important issue that the economic survey probably a couple of years back, along with the finance minister's speech, the budget speech also pointed out that between 2005 and 2016, say in the 10-year period, roughly 216 million people were lifted out of the poverty line. Now, India's poverty line is so low, okay, it is very difficult to be below the poverty line. And despite it, there is a humongous amount of people, 80% of our people, who must be below this poverty line. Depends on what is your definition of poverty and other things. But having said that, I must also say that abject poverty faced by our grandfathers is no longer today in India. The abject poverty is when you don't get food, when you don't have even 3 square meters of clothing per year. That was what was faced during the wartime, during a period leading to the independence and so on and so forth, when India was completely bled of its last drop of blood by the British. So that poverty is well and truly behind us. What we are facing today is an issue of inequity. There is appalling sense uh, of a set of people becoming ostentatiously rich. They demonstrate their wealth, the private aircrafts, the huge buildings that they have, the wealth that they have, the shares that they own in corporates,
And India produces enormous number of billionaires. But the same country is compelled to feed 80% of its population through the ration shop mechanism. Every time the Prime Minister comes and thumps his chest and says, look, we are feeding 80 crore people. Extraordinary, 80 crore people being fed, meaning there is no poverty. It's an issue of distribution. Now it is gone past the issue of production. It is now an issue of distribution. So there are two issues. We should not get conflated between the two. One is production, lack of production. That was there in 40s, 50s. But we have now come to a stage where there is production, but the benefit of the production is not reaching the vast swath of people. Now, government believes, and I would say to some extent wrongly, that this can be remedied by taxes. Take it from MRV's hand, give it to Mr. Chowdhury's hand, or take it from Chowdhury's hand and distribute it to MRV's hand through a process of taxation. India's taxation regime will be one of the most corrosive. The rates are moderate. I tell you, the rates are not the issue. The regime is highly corrosive. And we are assuming that by taxing one and paying the other through welfare mechanism, we can sort out this inequity problem. We will not be able to do that in the next 50 years also, is my humble submission.
Great. Now, if you look at the inequity that exists, as you said correctly, production is not an issue at all. Production is...
No. Sir, I said it is not an issue compared to 40s and 50s.
Yes. Okay.
Let us not use absolute terms like production is not an issue at all. That at all is my problem.
I think the country is producing enough to feed all its citizens.
Correct.
That's what I mean when I say that production.
Yeah, we have reached a stage.
Yes. We have reached a stage. Good or bad, the quality of the food being produced, the health implications of the food that is being partaken are, of course, different issues to be discussed separately. But as of today, it's not impossible to provide food for every citizen.
Correct.
That's what is the situation. Now, if that is true, then what is it that makes the government distribute food free or near free terms to a majority of the people, which means, are we not able to generate enough earning capability among the people? So employment, or whatever you call it, I mean, I don't know, employment and all those things keep meaning different things for different people at different times. So I think capability to generate earning has been an issue and leading to this inequity of distribution. So what do you think, what contributes to that, and what is the solution?
See, there is no singular factor that contributes to these type of things. It's a confluence of several factors, coincidence of several factors that brings about these type of issues. Now, what does the government do to actually improve employment opportunities so that people can earn their living, go back and spend it to get what they want, at least 2 square meals and say 10, 12 square meters of clothing every year? Now, the problem as I see it is that today there is huge amount of technology that is coming in. That is robbing people from employing manual labor. When I say manual labor, it is not only lifting the weight, it is several things that was being done. Today, for instance, 10 years back, you necessarily had to have a boy who would go to the office, deposit the check, bring it back, then follow it up next day to see whether the checks have all been credited, so on and so forth.
Right, the checkbook.
Write the cash book, then make a mistake on the total, and then get again you have somebody to fire him in the evening that the totaling is not been done despite being given a calculator. But today, what is happening is you have net banking, you have all these facilities that people don't employ those type of people who used to be your office boys or peons. So what is happening is the advent of tech is robbing people also of some jobs. The second one, iniquity is a self-fulfilling prophecy that the more iniquitous you become, you don't actually allow economic growth. Where all money gets concentrated in one hand and others are left without money to spend, it actually stifles growth and actually hurts the people who are actually without employment in the first place. The third one, and I would say this is something very important, probably the governments of the day, right from the Nehruvian times and the constitutional constructors, if Mr. Shashank Choudhury doesn't have a job, the government's construct right from 1947 was, don't worry, we are there. And it stifled your entrepreneurship, your initiative, that Daro mat hum hai, we will give you ration. Daro mat hum hai, we will do family planning for you. Daro mat, you have to be lazy. You just have to be lazy. And your individual initiative was being stifled. And coming to this, understand that we as a civilization are understand this idea of karmanyavadikarasya. You may not have read the Gita in full. I have not read the Gita in full, and several of the viewers will not have read the Gita in full, but they would understand karmanyavadikarasya ma phalechu kadachana. Why? Because it is a civilizational thought that there is a divinity who will take care of you, but you first take care of yourself. So it is the most agnostic civilization that you will ever come across, that believes in its own hard work. But 1947 say, we have said, don't believe in yourself or the divinity, believe in constitution, Supreme Court, central government, state government, welfare, and they will take care of you. So there is a large swath of population in this country who believe that it is the duty of the government to bail them out of their poverty. So we require a tectonic shift in even communicating to our masses and say that Sarkar can do thus far and no further. Thus, Sarkar has got its own limitations. Sarkar cannot be running BSNL to Air India, to pharma companies, to distribution, to running trains. No, you see the mess that we have created, running IITs, to education, to health, to culture, to whatnot. You know, you have a whole range of them. So we believe, psychologically we believe, that it is the duty of the government to bail us out of poverty. Now, this is unacceptable, both civilizationally and economically. Karmanyavadikarasya does not mean only in terms of civilizational parlance. I'm also talking about economics. I can probably give 300 milliliters of blood once in 6 months. I cannot be giving you 6 liters of blood every day. That is what, unfortunately, we have turned the state into. So unless we redefine and redesign the state and its duties and convey it to the people that, yes, in terms of COVID, in terms of natural calamity, in terms of war, in terms of some major upheavals, the government will step in and probably provide you ration. No doubt, it should. But to expect that government should do ration shop and give it free, and from free food to free clothing to free, in my state of Tamil Nadu, they even gave free TVs. Okay, free cycles, free notebook. And now they are talking about free distribution of 2,000 rupees of cash every month to every household. Now, I am with the sentiments, but who will bail the cat? Who will fund this program? Nobody answers that.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, it will be a tax on the most disciplined, hardworking, sincere Indian.
Hmm.
So you are robbing Paul to pay Peter.
Hmm.
No problem with that. But if Peter is indisciplined
Hmm.
and he has lost his zest to work,
Hmm.
and the government also does not help him to skill himself,
Hmm.
what they do is the easiest way is to get hold of Paul, tax him further to pay Peter.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
So just one aside on that Karmanyeva Adhikarasya. See, one most popular prevalent interpretation is that you do your work and a divinity will take care of your requirement. The other thing is that if you limit the expectation of outcome from your work,
Yeah.
I am okay. Now I am taking 10 steps and I expect to be 15 meters away from where I am standing right now. This is an expectation I associate with my work. When I do that, I will never be able to get any result beyond the expectation that I have set. So if somebody goes and says, मेरा तो कर्म है, मैं ये काम करता हूँ, 1 किलो शाम को चावल लेके घर आता हूँ, so he will never go beyond that.
Correct.
So when you do karma only for the sake of karma and not setting limits to it, the limits to the outcome, then you get the best result. This is another way of looking at it.
Yeah.
So if you extrapolate that concept to economy as a whole, not as an individual, are we really doing work without setting expectations? I think we are not even aware what expectation is being set against which work. For example,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll give you a very good example. You gave a very fine interpretation that when this NDA government came in 2014, the first thing was you leave your subsidy for gas. A lot of people left it. Then it was like we will use that cushion money to provide it to poor people. More people sacrificed in order to ease the life of the people elsewhere who were not able to afford. Slowly, we have come out of that expectation that gas will be, cooking gas will be provided free of cost with subsidy or whatever. Today, there's absolutely, most of the people buy it without any subsidy, and those who buy it with subsidy are also a very minuscule subsidy that comes to it. So we have to progress the society into that kind of thinking. As you said, there is to be a change of mindset. That change of mindset happened in this particular area of life, but elsewhere, maybe because of COVID setting in and giving us a jolt, basically, somehow we are struggling to understand that bare essentials, food, clothes, and shelter cannot be at somebody else's cost.
Exactly. Exactly. And that cannot be on a sustainable basis.
And can for a short period, maybe it can be done. As you said, war and other things. But now what? Now what does the nation do?
Yeah. The nation has to come back to the fundamentals. Believe that here is a country which probably bases itself on its rights. We have modeled our economic policy based on certain fundamental rights of entitlement.
Now, where does this rights flow in? Now, there was a letter written probably in months before Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. And there was a United Nations Human Rights Commission that was being formed at that point in time. And the head of that human rights group requested Mahatma Gandhi to pen a letter. Mahatma Gandhi said there is no right in life. There is only duties. And rights are non-existence without duties. Something words to that effect he had said. Now the point is, rights are predominantly a Christian thought. And in Christian theology, thanks to the original sin committed by Adam and Eve, they believe that man is born bad.
Yeah, sinners.
Sinners. And it will take the Christ and baptism to provide you salvation from your original sin. And nobody else can provide you salvation. It is only the Christ. This is the Christian theology. But there is a guy called James Boyce who has written a book titled Born Bad. And he argues that the most thinking in diverse field mimics this born sinner syndrome.
Yeah.
And he says Thomas Hobbes, great political thinkers like Rousseau, Thomas Hobbes, Karl Marx, or evolutionary biologists like Richard Dawkins, all these people have inherently held that man is bad, brutish, violent, selfish. And they have always held that you require an external agent for correction. If it is Christ in theology, it will be the state as far as politics is concerned. And they created an omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient state. Then they realized that having created this monster, you need to be protected from the monstrous state. They created fundamental rights so that the state will not interfere into that particular zone of your life. Now, this fundamental right is being expanded by our Supreme Court. Every now and then it is being as if fundamental rights are an expandable commodity. And they say privacy is the latest one in Puttaswamy judgment. So the point I'm trying to labor on is that we have created a right-based constitution and a rights-based society. When our society is in fact a duty-based society and a rights-based constitution is anathema to the duty-based society, probably we require refashioning part 3 of the constitution to include fundamental duties apart from fundamental rights. So a society will also think, you can't have 9 children even today when the population is around 1.4 billion in the country, and then say that I should be given fundamental rights of a ration card and feed all these people. It becomes Prime Minister's duty and my duty to fund the Prime Minister's program through exorbitant taxes to fund 9 different people lying down there with, without any sense or idea. So somewhere down the line, we have to create, and this cannot be created only through state fiat. State can punish, but if you want to cultivate a society which is duty-based, we have to necessarily go and travel beyond laws and regulations.
Correct. So, in fact, from law to justice, that is what I think, in our country, never seen justice being discussed. It's been always laws and case laws and whatnot. But anyway.
Laws and regulations.
Laws and regulations. But anyway, that's fine. But essentially what we arrive at is that there is a need to have a relook at the composition and the construct of the society itself. and take them back to what would ensure a more duty-prone society than a rights-deserving society.
Rights-based society. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think we've done half an hour. Good to start with. We will be continuing the discussion on this topic and others on a weekly basis. So I'll
Yes.
bring this discussion to an end. Thank you very much, MR, for having been with us. And I'm sure the people are going to like this discussion. And as we speak more, we would be discovering more things that we have not been thinking about.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very sure. Namaste.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.